get to the socializing afterwards, but we get about the business of our service pretty quickly. I abandoned much of what I came here to talk to you about today. I have a reconsideration after the events that are going on in Beckley. I do still want to talk about activism and give you a brief history. I brought some literature to kind of talk about what the Episcopal Church is so that I wouldn't have to talk about that so much. I'm going to talk to you a minute about my personal story and what brought me to the Episcopal Church. I am not a cradle Episcopalian, and yes, they use that term like the Catholics do, cradle Episcopalians, cradle Catholics. I am not a cradle Episcopalian. I grew up in a Baptist church, and I went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I was president of the youth group. I became a church pianist at age 10, and was the church pianist until I graduated from high school. My mother, who to this day was the kindest, gentlest, most compassionate person that I've ever known, who truly lived every day of her life for the Lord, was rejected by that same church when I started to date a black guy. They didn't really say anything to me because I had moved away and was in Greensboro attending college, but they shunned my mother. And for the next 2 decades, I became a very outspoken, radicalized, anti-organized religion type of person. And I spoke as passionately as I speak for my causes now against organized religion, all the while reminding people, I'm not denouncing Christ or my belief in, or my faith, but I don't believe that any of it is represented in organized religion anymore. When I moved back to West Virginia, I was adopted at birth, and when I moved back to West Virginia in '99, I met my biological family. And my biological family was attached to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, and I started going to St. Stephen's as an activity to have with my grandparents, to get to know them. It was a bonding thing. I had no interest in being a part of the church, but they had a quite lovely priest at the time named Father John White, and he's a pretty radical guy, very progressive. I had never met anybody like him. I had never met a religious leader that would stand up and talk about the hypocrisies of the church. One of the first services that I attended at St. Stephen's, he talked about the pressure of us as individual church members to always do the right thing, even when the church doesn't want to stand up and do the right thing, because historically, churches have not always been on the right side of the right issues. For example, when England abolished slavery, did anyone want to guess who the greatest slave owner was in England at the time? It was the Church of England. Wow. They owned the greatest number of slaves in all of England. And so he encouraged and brought all of that rebellious spirit out in me. And after college, I was around a lot of heavy African teachers. They taught African history. These were people that didn't mix with a lot of white people other than their lectures. And for some reason, they felt something in me and brought me into their inner circle. I had a brethren in North Carolina that was like that, and a sister who became one of my closest and dearest friends, and her family was actually a part of the Black Panther movement. And these were radical people with radical teachings that took me under their wing, and feeling my radical spirit, I think they felt that camaraderie. So when Father John asked me to take over the children's programs at St. Stephen, I was like, are you sure? I said, have you met me yet? And he was like, that right there is exactly what I want, because I know you're going to bring some truth and some refreshing things to the kids, and don't worry about what the old people in the church say, but I'll take care of them. And so that's kind of my backstory with St. Stephen's. I didn't know that churches could be like that, inclusive and loving and accepting of whatever different kind of beliefs that you have that might not be exactly like ours. Well, that's okay. Come and worship with us. We still love you. No matter what, we still love you. And the big saying in the Episcopal Church that we're known, our national platform, is the Episcopal Church welcomes you. And we kind of take that serious. We try to live that with everybody that we meet. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a few things on how the Episcopal Church has been sometimes at the forefront of some things in social issues. Starting back with 1804, Absalom Jones was ordained as the first black priest in the Episcopal Church. Let's all think about what that means in 1804 for a black priest to be installed in a white church, basically. I mean, the Episcopal Church has historically been a white church. I mean, so that's a pretty profound thing. In 1970, the first authorized women's members joined the House of Deputies in the Episcopal Church. This is in 1970. In 1974, the first 11 women are ordained to priesthood at an irregular service in the Episcopal Church. General Convention, which is the Episcopal Church's highest ruling body, in 1976 approved the ordination of women and regularized the 74-75 ordinations. Also in 1976, the General Convention of the Episcopal Church declared that homosexual persons are children of God who have a full and equal claim with all other persons for the love, acceptance, and pastoral care and concern of the church. Since then, faithful Episcopalians have been working toward a greater understanding and radical inclusion of all of God's children. The church has continued its work toward full inclusion of the LGBTQ community. In 2003, the first openly gay bishop was consecrated. In 2009, General Convention resolved that God's call is open to all, including the LGBTQ community. So in 2009, we said, if you feel like you're being called to be a minister and you're gay, that's great. Come into the Episcopal Church. We welcome you.
Wow.
And in 2012, a provisional rite of blessing for same-gender relationships was authorized, and discrimination against transgender persons in the ordination process was officially prohibited. So a transgender person can come be a priest in the Episcopal Church. We welcome you. In 2015, General Convention voted for full marriage equality of all persons in the Episcopal Church. And that actually went into effect December 1st of this year. So, and in case you didn't know, the bishop of the Diocese of West Virginia is very progressive and supports all this. So all of the Episcopal churches in West Virginia will perform gay marriages. We all welcome that inclusion and diversity, and we're lucky and fortunate to have a bishop. I don't want to make it seem like the Episcopal Church is perfect, because we're far from perfect. In 2015, when General Convention ruled to include this full inclusion, the churches in the South basically fell apart.
Wow.
You can do the research. There were multi-million-dollar lawsuits where these churches broke up, and you know the conservative side of the church said, you guys have gone too far, and we're going to leave and start our own church, and that what you say is not biblical, and all these things that people say. So there has been a lot of controversy, and we lost a lot of members. At St. Stephen's, believe it or not, because I was the senior warden there the last 2 years, we only lost 2 members over this. And they were and others may have gone, but they didn't officially pull their church membership. So if they're gone, we don't know, because like a lot of us, we have a lot of people that come on Christmas Eve and Easter, but they're still church members, and we still love them and welcome them on those days. So the last thing I want to talk about, 2 more dates. In 2006, the highest office in the church, of the Episcopal Church, it's called the presiding bishop. Every state has a bishop, and that's a head of the diocese of that state, but there's one he's called the big bishop, and his name is the presiding bishop. In 2006, we elected for a 9-year term the first woman bishop to head the Episcopal Church worldwide. And in November 1st, 2015, the Most Reverend Michael Bruce Curry was installed as the 27th presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. He's the first African-American presiding bishop, and he's from Charlotte, North Carolina. He came from Charlotte, but he grew up in Buffalo, and he was raised by his father, who at one time was a Baptist priest and then a Baptist pastor, and then he became an Episcopal priest, and he was a big civil rights activist in his area. His father led the desegregation movement in Buffalo. They were a big part of that, so he grew up in that. And one thing that Bishop Curry always says that I really love is he says the work of evangelism and social justice must go hand in hand because it's all a part of the gospel. And I love that. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And I wanted to spend the remaining few minutes that I have left talking about what's going on in Beckley, because I've heard a lot of comments. Like, there was a book passed around and distributed to all the council members called, I'll pass my phone around if you guys want to see what it looks like. I want to point out that this was on the pews and the seating, just laying there with their personal stuff. So me being the person that I am, went up and took a picture of it. It's called The Health Hazards of Homosexuality.
Yeah, I saw that.
So if you haven't seen this is the kind of things that are being distributed to our city council. They were all given a copy of this book along with a packet of literature that supports this. Now, a lot of people that I showed this to or that I've talked to about this, they said, oh, that's good actually, because they're good. These people are going to show themselves to be how ignorant they are. And I'm like, no. Don't take that approach. I said, because these are not the normal people that come crawl out of their rocks for certain things, that are going to come talk in their ignorance and their broken English. These are very highly professional people that speak very proficiently, and they're going to be very professional. They're going to sound very educated in their speech. They're not going to sound like hill hicks that are just hateful people. They're going to sound hateful, but they're going to sound organized and professional and educated. They are entrenched with our city council members. Ray Lambert was with the Beckley Fire Department for 30 years.
And he has a huge financial investment in our city.
He does. And these people were well received at the workshop the other night. It wasn't like council was like, they were very well received. So I want to touch on something that Christina said, because I think it's very important. If you can't come to the meeting, whoever asked about can't come to the meeting, the number one thing that everybody can do right now is, if you live in Beckley city limits, find out what ward you live in and email your specific ward person, because you're the one whose vote matters to them. It's great if you email all the city council members, but it's specifically important that if you live in Beckley city limits, that you email the council person for your ward and let them know, hey, I support this and here's why. And
Frank Williams is my ward person, and I have dealt with him on other issues before, and he was really helpful, really nice man and everything. And I'm just totally shocked that he is the chair of the Human Rights Commission, and that he is, I think he's basically against this, and he's the one wanting these additions put into this, and he missed the vote at the Human Rights Commission. He was supposed to be there, and then he didn't show up. I think he possibly purposely missed that, and
I also believe that he purposefully wasn't there that night.
Yes.
But
he needs to be off the Human Rights Commission, because I don't feel,
I agree.
those feelings.
It doesn't support human rights.
Yes, exactly.
But I wanted to say something about that. I sent all of the city council people the same email message and Facebook message saying, I look forward to your support of the ordinance. Thank you for being a progressive person, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember exactly how I put it, but I basically, even the people I knew weren't supporting it, I sent them a message saying, thank you for supporting this, because that's really awesome of you.
Well, I
Because
sent
they'll
some
read
to
it.
Frank. I sent some to Frank, and I said, I know his religion, because his religious preferences is what's motivating this. And I said that I don't believe Jews
mention that Pastor Sims really needs some people to have a conversation, a friendly conversation with him, because the Heart of God Ministry is, they're a good place from what I've seen in the past. And that's where Frank Williams is. They're good people, and Pastor Sims, or Bishop Sims, whatever his title is, should be in support of a non-discrimination ordinance.
Well, Bishop Sims was unwilling to even participate in the candlelight ceremony that we had at St. Stephen's, the unity ceremony,
Wow.
after the Charlottesville shooting. So I don't know where you're getting your information, but that is not my perception of that place. So, I will say, for all of you, if you're out there and you hear in Beckley, well, that's not Christian and it's against the Bible, I want all of you to be bold and say, well, that's not what the Episcopals believe. That's not what the Lutherans believe. That's not what the Unitarians believe. You need to point out to them that that is not the view of all Christians. We all don't think and feel that way.
That's why it's so important for all the churches to get out and support this, and show that there are churches in this area that, support that.
And you can even say, the Catholics believe homosexuality is wrong like you, but even their priest says discriminating against any person is wrong and against the teachings of Christ. St. Francis has come out publicly to say, not that we support homosexuality, but that we support this ordinance because all people deserve to be safe in their neighborhoods and their communities. All people deserve to not be discriminated against and to be treated fairly and equally. So to me, if you're calling yourself a Christian, you can't get behind that, because a lot of these business owners say, oh, I'm support you guys, but I can't get involved because I can't get involved in politics. This is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue. And we have to get people to stop thinking about it. It's a political issue. It's a religious issue. It's not. It's a human rights issue.
I would also want to
And
point
one day, all of these Christian churches that are against this and fighting this, they're going to be viewed the same way that the churches that were slave owners are viewed. You're going to be on the wrong side of history. Now's your time to get on the right side of history.
That's why they're losing members.
That's why you're losing members. Stop making our kids leave the state to be able to live their lives and be themselves.
There's another really important aspect of this for people to remember when you're talking about it. The ordinance, there's one section of it where it does say it, but the ordinance in general does not say that it's for the protection of the LGBTQ community.
No.
It says it is for protection against the discrimination of sexual orientation and or gender identity, and that applies to straight people as well. So it's important to remember that this is not just an LGBTQ thing. This is for everybody. So you can't be discriminated against because you're female.
Well, that's already in there.
No.
You can't, that's already, federal law, it says you can't be discriminated against because of your gender, your sexual, because if you're male or female, you can't refuse to let someone who's a single female move into your house. That's already federal law, but this is the orientation.
But in other words, it protects you from reverse discrimination if you have, say, a small company that is run by.
I'm sure that will be struck down. You also can say that the belief that homosexuality is so wrong is an Old Testament belief, and the whole basis of Christianity is the New Testament.
Well, I agree with that too. I always tell people if we were still living in the Old Testament, we wouldn't be Christians, we would be Jews.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, your point is,
Well, why don't they ignore that like you do everything else?
exactly.
Eating shellfish.
And that's the other thing is the Episcopal stance on the Bible is we don't really believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible. We acknowledge that this is a collection of stories about men, human beings like us. And yes, they were they were on a mission and on a path, but as all human beings, the story is going to vary from person to person, and as each person tells it, it's going to get a little different, and we don't deal with that. And then there's the whole translation from Amharic to English doesn't always, there's not always that perfect way to translate either. So there's a lot lost in the translation. You can't just read the Bible and get the story of God. You have to read other books to go along with it. History, you know.
Isn't the
You know,
church,
eating
England
shellfish.
very similar to the Episcopal Church? So
We
far as
are
their
broke
liturgy?
off from the Church of England. We're a Protestant church, but we're part of the Anglican Communion.
I think it's really good to know who our friends are in the community as far as other places of, I don't even know.
And
I
another,
hesitate to say worship or faith when
And
it comes to the Unitarian.
another group, if you're looking for people to try to talk to get in support of this ordinance, if you have any Methodist friends, let me tell you what's going on with the Methodists right now. The Lutherans are what we call in full communion with the Episcopal Church, meaning we can share priests. Like an Episcopal priest can go serve at a Lutheran church, or a Lutheran pastor can come to serve at an Episcopal church. The Methodists have asked to come into full communion with the Episcopal Church. At this time, they have been told that can't happen as long as your stance on the LGBTQ community is what it is, because we have gay priests, you know, we believe in full inclusion and everything. We have, if you're a Methodist pastor and you want to come be in an Episcopal church, you're going to have to perform same-sex marriages. And so, the Methodist church, the big Methodist church, has been told that until you reverse this, we can't be in full communion with you. Well, they have asked to be on the 2020 agenda at the General Convention for the Episcopal Church, with the basis of that being that their General Convention is in 2019 and they're expecting to overturn that and to come on board where we're at. So the Methodists are right there. And they're anticipating that vote happening this year, where they're going to have full inclusion for the LGBTQ community in their churches as well. And then they're going to ask to be in full communion with the Episcopal Church, meaning we can share clergy and all of that. But
What about
That's the-
Presbyterian?
I haven't heard anything about the Presbyterian, and we are not in full communion with them right now.
It's
I mean,
good.
here's the thing about the Episcopal Church, though. Any baptized person who was baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit can come and take communion at the Episcopal Church. Unlike the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
we used to be in full communion, the Episcopal Church, with the Catholic Church, because we're basically the liberal side of the Catholic Church, if you really want to break it down. Our service is almost identical. We do all the same things, say the same creeds and prayers, and which is the part I like, is the ceremony, but,
I think it's got to do with the communion. They're taking the actual blood of Jesus, while everyone else is just a symbol of the blood of Jesus.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
I think it's really good that we, like I was saying, that we do know who our friends are in the community, because a lot of times we will get people who come here, or possibly people that go to the Episcopal Church or whatever, and like they may come here looking to fit in somewhere, but they're looking for something a little more spiritual, a little more, you know, Christian, right? Than what we provide. And we can direct them there. Or likewise, if someone comes to the Episcopal Church and they're looking for something a little less
exactly.
Christian,
Yep.
we can say, well, we know this nice route down the road.
The Episcopal Church is a wonderful church. There used to be a small Episcopal church at Grandview years
All
ago.
Souls.
All Souls. And when I was looking to fit in somewhere, I visited several times, and I never left without just a wonderful message and a thought-provoking and a wonderful feeling.
They were a wonderful
They
group,
were
too.
a great group, yeah, really great.
So I thank you for your time today.
I
It
have
might
a
not.
question for you.
Okay, sure.
What is one of your basic children's services like? What kind of stuff do you focus on?
It's been different, and I try to do like a year-long theme. I do really non-traditional things. Like 1 year we wrote letters to kids in other churches in other countries, and asking them, like a pen pal kind of thing. But well, what do you do? What are your traditions in your church? And we just tried to extend that worldview kind of thing. One of the very first things I did the very first year that I had the Sunday school was I asked for a flat world map to hang on the wall. And Father John just started laughing. He said, I already know where this is going. And because he knows me, he knew me so well, I wanted to take my Bible and show them where all of these places in the Bible, because Christianity has a way, modern day Christianity has a way of making you, modern day churches have a way, let me change that to say modern day churches have a way to make you think that these stories in the Bible and these places are about people that look like me. They're not. It's not our history. It's somebody else's history. And so I wanted to take my Bible and show these kids where all these places in the world really were, so they would get the concept without me even having to say it. That's not a place where geographically white people are naturally from, you know. What do the people in this region look like? What are their customs? What are their beliefs, you know? And so we went from that, and then I did a couple of years of really non-traditional things like that, and then last year I realized they don't know a lot about what they should know as an Episcopalian, and that's my fault too, so we studied saints last year.
Like, for instance, Jesus wasn't an American.
Exactly.
Jesus was very much not an American.
White Jesus didn't exist.
He was a refugee and an immigrant, so, yeah. But this year we're studying other world religions. Like we studied the Jewish faith in the beginning, and now we've moved on to the Muslim faith. And I'm trying to focus on how we're similar more than how we're different.
Yeah, I spoke to someone who was a Christian, I assume he was a Christian, he was strange. Like he was misinformed about Caucasian, about the Caucasus Mountains, but he was surprised that the Muslim faith was also based on the Old Testament.
The first 5 books of both
Yeah.
of the Quran and the Bible are the same,
Yeah.
exactly the same. So
That's just,
If you're serious in that exploration, there is a wonderfully written, easily read book called God is Not One. It was developed just as the run-up to the Iraqi war. And it takes the 8 major religions, takes 8 of the seriously populated religions, and follows them in the same format, so that you can compare Jewish to Christians and Muslims.
oh yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Thank you.
I think you will find it fascinating.
Just so that you guys know, the 4 that I picked, because our Sunday school doesn't meet in the summer, so I only have a limited amount of time with them. So we're doing the Jewish faith, Muslim, Christianity, and Buddhism are the 4 that we're touching on. And the kids are really into it. So, yeah.
My only point in raising it is, this is one perspective, but it is a perspective that supports that in a careful analysis, in an intellectual analysis, God is worshipped in many ways
And that is
has many different objectives.
very much a message that I want to bring to the kids that I'm entrusted to speak to, is that I'm not one of those people that believes our way is the only way. And luckily I had a priest that embraced that in me, you know, that didn't expect me to portray that message either, because I believe in the end it basically boils down to what you do and how you treat people. Are you kind and considerate and helpful, and are you really doing Christ's true works, which is to be a helper and to love and to spread that love. And
One final point, if you review, and I would encourage you to do it, the position of the Presbyterian Church in the United States, in the USA, is even further to the left of most of the other major sects.
my grandfather used to say about the Beckley Presbyterian Church, he said, "You won't be able to find a more middle-of-the-road bunch than that." Yes, guys.
Hey, when is your church's services? I mean, it kind of sounds interesting. I'd just like to be there for a children's service once.
services are, the ones that, for kids, it starts at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and that is I'll give you one of these, Sky. It has all of our service times, and most of you, I ran out because you guys had a really nice crowd today. I tried to give everybody, this is what the bulletin looks like for today's service at St. Stephen's, and it just kind of shows you what, from beginning to end, what our whole service is like.
It's bigger than ours.
Well, we do a lot of standing up and kneeling and all of that, and it's all written in there, so you
Yeah,
always
it's
know
okay.
what to do if you're a newcomer to the church.
By the way, do you
That's what they were,
Like,
South
still do the
Dakota
children's
funeral
services?
services.
I do.
Oh,
I didn't do one
We didn't
today,
do
but my
that.
kids knew I wasn't gonna be there today, so.
We were gonna stay.
Yeah,
I'd like to
having
be there for one of
services
them.
instead
I'll
of
have
having
to see if there's a way that I can, maybe
Instead of having
drop you off. I don't know.
I mean, it just
the
sounds really
memorial of his
interesting.
wife, they
Yeah.
would have church services, which was very.
Thank you guys so much. Jean, did you have something from me?
Did you
I
say
saw
you
you raise your hand, but.
I started attending Shannon Unitarian Universalist Church back in the 70s. And and then at some point I went back to the Baptist church. But that's the only place that I've been that I'm aware that my kids were taught about different religions.
Wow.
They used to go visit other places.
Wow, I like that.
And so this is the second time I've heard of somebody else doing something to teach about something other than self.
Well, I will say, because I was a little nervous about how some of the older, more conservative side of our congregation might take that when they heard about it, so I actually used my summer months and I went to all the parents and talked to them and said, hey, this is what I wanna do for Sunday school this year, and I have a great group of parents, and they were all like, I think that's great, go for it. So then I was like, whatever anybody else wants to say, I have their parents' permission, so they really have no recourse against me now, so. Even in my inclusive church, I have to look out for those things sometimes, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.